What is up, people? How's it going? Hopefully, you guys can hear me better today. Um, Let me check quickly that this works fine. Yeah. So, how's everybody? And this session is particularly for the Dart on the server side, and a lot of you guys have been asking me for that. So, I thought why not make a complete session on that. So, I'm not going to be explaining more code wise here because you're still going to be looking into some code, but that is not the only focus for this session. We're going to be looking into the pros and the cons of Dart on the server side, and at the same time, also introducing a pretty simple package and called as shelf, and I'll just be like doing a detailed brief introduction on it, and I'm just going to leave it to you guys to decide if you want to use it or not use it. So I'm just going to be explaining a few things that are possible with Dart on the server, few things that are not possible on with Dart on the server side. And so yeah, it's going to be a combination of that, so you guys can decide if you want to use it or not use it. So let's give it another minute time. I'm pretty sure that this session was supposed to be held I don't know, like 2 hours ago, 3 hours ago, but there were some detail like issues with the stream, so now it's working fine, I guess. So let's wait. I don't think the Google sends out or YouTube sends out notification because I did not receive any notification. But anyway, if this starts pretty fine, we can go ahead and continue. If it does not, I'll still be doing as much as possible, so you can watch it after the session ends. Just confirm that my audio is fine. If it is not fine, I can fix it as early as possible, so that as we go on, we don't have to worry about it. So yeah, hoping that audio is fine. I'm keeping it as close to my mouth as possible. It's picking up from this, so let's hopefully let's assume that this works fine. I'll probably give it another minute or two before I start, because it's going to be a couple of slides, and we're just going to be looking into what is possible and what is not possible. All right, so let me move on, because we're going to be looking into the possibilities, and I'm also going to be talking about what you can expect from here. So share my screen. All right, so here I am. All right, so here I am, and we're going to be looking into the possibility of Dart on the server side. There's one important thing that I discussed. When I started learning Dart, I was looking into the possibility of it being used similar to Python for automation scripting and things like that. So I was looking into this for Dart, Google Drive, not Google Drive, it's Google automation scripting. I don't know. I remember contributing for one of the packages around this, so I'm not pretty sure. So yeah, there's this package that I contributed to, and that's when I picked up or thought how useful is GitHub for that, right? So I'll probably drop a link sometime down in the description if you guys are interested. So we can, the possibility of Dart on the server side is primarily because Dart as a programming language can be used for bunch of different things as well. So if you think of a programming language, and if you say that this programming language will only be used for building or used only for Flutter, or only going to be used for only mobile application cross-platform development, you'll think to yourself like, what are other possibilities that you can think of this, right? The first thing that comes to your mind when you say Python is it can be used for machine learning, it can be used for automation scripting, it can be used for server building, front-end development, mobile application development. So you see the range of things that is possible with Python. And why is it not that it's possible with Dart, or why not people are talking about Dart as a programming language? Like, why exactly is people not putting it specifically as a programming language capability? The primary reason being is that because it was a kind of an abandoned programming language. um, it started in the early 2010, I'm not sure, 2010, the 10-year region. It started around that. It was supposed to be an alternative for JavaScript, right? It was started around the JavaScript time as well. So they wanted to like replace all the JavaScript and bring Dart as the only programming language for website scripting or website building. It did not catch on. A lot of people did not find it useful, or I don't know what exactly was the reason back then. But JavaScript took over, and you cannot see a website with a JavaScript at least at this point of time. Yes, there are a lot of alternative to using building websites, but you can still not, you cannot render a web page without having some kind of JavaScript built in, right? And that's the length to which JavaScript has grown. And if you say JavaScript, you will for sure tell that it's for the web. And some people will say JavaScript can be also used as a framework for mobile. No, all of these things are going to be there, but in particular with Dart, right? There's this concept where, or this is mindset where people not are not spending their time to explore. I'll tell you why that also happens, because in the pros and the cons I'll explain about it. So in particular for this session, I'm going to be talking about what we are going to be doing um, in this pretty much the session is to understand how the server scripting with Dart works. And even before I delve into that, pretty much going to be explaining to you guys what are the pros and the cons with Dart on the server. Like if you say I have built a server, have hosted it on Heroku, or let's say have hosted it on AWS, some kind of AWS cloud, and you were saying that I'm going to be rendering this and all of my application is going to be routing or talking to this Dart server. It's going to give you some kind of a jitter, at least because that is not explored that much, right? If I say that I'm going to be writing a huge scalable application that is going to have Dart on the server, uh, I'm pretty much going to be nervous because I don't really know what is Dart on the server. I don't know the pretty much the performance of Dart on the server. So that's what I'm going to be talking about in pros and the cons. And finally, I'll explain. There is one important package that Dart shows, and I'll just talk about that in a brief introduction, and also how the Dart performs in the compilation faster compared to other programming languages. So even before I begin, this session is pretty much for people who asked me like, can I use Dart on the server? Because I already know Flutter, can I use Dart on the server? The answer is yes, you can use Dart on the server, but at the same time, just be careful as to what you're using it for. If you're going to be using it for a scalable application that you want to have millions and millions of customers at some point down the line, I would still be very anxious about it, right? I still be thinking like, why are you using Dart on the server when you have other alternatives? So that's what I'm going to be talking about. So even before we begin, the disclaimer is that this isn't particularly a programming session. I'm just going to be taking questions as much as it comes, and I'm also going to be talking about Dart as a scripting side for the server. So let's get started. So yeah, so the main objective of the server-side scripting is to build RESTful APIs. And this is what we are trying to do. And when I say RESTful APIs, I had this entire session built for RESTful APIs on Python in the Unacademy platform. So if you guys are interested, you can check it out. It's using the pretty famous framework called as Fast API. That's what I talked about. Like Fast API is a Python-based framework that is used for REST API building, right? And this REST API is kind of like the standard for the current servers. Now if I take for example, let's open have a lot of things here. Let's open something out of this. Let me open, I don't want to put analytics. This is Amazon, it's an affiliate program. Okay, let's open, and I don't even know what I'm supposed to be opening. So let's see what else I have bookmarked here. Okay, let me open this one, right? I mean, oh my god, why did I open this? Let me open a GitHub page. Let me open my GitHub page, and I'll probably be opening this one. Let's say I have some GitHub page right here, and as soon as you see this GitHub page, you do understand, is it signed in? It's not signed in. Oh my god. Anyway, so this I'll take you to my page. Just check it out if you're interested, guys. Oh, is it not there? Oh, why is it not there? I'm supposed to be there. Users, Bharat Monk. Here I am. So this is my YouTube GitHub page. You guys can check it out if you're interested. So you do see that there is a bunch of different things that are happening here. There is like a profile page here. There's a bunch of repositories that I've written, and also my commit over the last few years. I mean, I'm pretty much not committing much to this repository at this point of time because I've changed my repository. I'm actually using a private repository at this point of time. A lot of code goes into it because I am building something on the site. Anyway, so this is going to be the repository. There's going to be 16 repositories that I've built. I do at some point drop some of this into it. Some of my packages code that I write for the YouTube channel Coder Monk goes inside this. Anyway, so if you see here, there is a profile page of sorts here. There's my name here. There's a follow button, and there's information to this right. And how do you think this server was built? Like, this is supposed to be a server that is rendering onto the website, right? You see website, you see a lot of information here. How do you think this was built? The primary reason this was built, or the primary architecture behind this, is to depend on the concept of REST APIs or RESTful APIs, however you want to call it. So REST APIs are basically a standard for building servers that can be easy for any client to communicate. So there's a client here, and let's say this is the GitHub client, and GitHub client is now communicating with the GitHub servers in the backend, and it is asking for the username. So it just says provide the username, right? Username Bharat Monk, right? When I just try to hit this URL, it is giving me this page right here. So it basically means that I'm rendering or getting information from the server by just using everyday URLs. I have a URL like google.com or github.com. That's a URL, right? Whatever you put after that, for example, if you see here, it's called as the path, and this is basically how the RESTful APIs are built. And this is also the standard for a lot of things. You have a lot of frameworks. Fast API is one which is built on Python. There is also, you have Hibernate, which is built on Java, and you have Node.js, you have Express.js. All of these are going to be used for the specific use case, which is to build RESTful APIs. And when I build RESTful APIs, my servers are actually very much more smarter than what it used to be 20 years ago. 20 years ago, you would have an RPC server where the client will have to connect to the server first using an IP address. The server will then ping back the information saying you're connected, and then it will ask for some information. It will give the information, and it will all happen with the IP as the main mode of communication, right? IP is the source of this. And if you want to add another client here, right, it's going to be taking so much time to set things up on the server first. You need to first whitelist the client. You need to say this client is a good client, and then you will say IP I'm going to be setting up, and all of these are going to be there. This is how the RPC works. There's also a bunch of different things where a bunch of other protocols as well, which I don't want to really delve into at this point of time. Anyway, so this is going to be the old technology 20 years, 10, 15 years ago. But the REST API kind of started with the eBay doing it, and eBay was very successful in doing it. It introduced the concept of REST APIs in 2005, and ever since then, you cannot find any application without a REST API client, REST API support. So let's take, for example, quick example here. For example, I want to do Spotify, right? Spotify REST APIs. If I put this, you will find that there's a web API for Spotify developers, and you will find all of the things that are available and also possible. Alright, so this is going to be the simple example here. So there's going to be the application that you're going to use. It could be a web application, it could be a mobile application, it could be any type of a client, and you will just hit the Spotify API and you get all the information. So you have the first 4 important request methods here: get, post, put, delete, and all of these are what we looked into in my series on fast API development and REST API development in the Unacademy platform. It's a free course. Again, if you guys are interested, you can check that out. So anyway, this REST API is what we are trying to build. Now this REST API could be built on any programming language. It could have been built on, I don't know, Scala, Rust, something like that. Any programming language that supports that these Spotify developers are finding it useful. They could have built this thing. It could have been built on Node. I don't really know. So you can still check out the stack, but I'm not going to delve into all of that. So this is what I'm trying to build now. I want to build a REST API that my server can communicate with easily. I don't want to build some kind of a complex server where information gets passed on and things like that. I want to build a simple server, and I want to do that in Dart, and that's what we're going to be looking into. So the primary objective for this session is to not exactly teach you guys how to do everything with Dart, because like I said in the start of the session itself, I am not a big fan of Dart on the server side. So if for those of you guys who asked me specifically like can Dart be used for server, I am making this session. So the whole objective is to build this REST API right here. So that's what I'm going to be doing. So I do see that a lot of you guys are online at this point of time. If you guys have any questions, time to drop it now so I can answer your questions right away. If you guys have any questions with respect to REST API, so things like that, you can ask me right now, because the next slide is going to be on the pros of Dart on the server. So I'll talk about that. But in case you guys have any questions or doubts, you just ask me right now so that I can answer it. How many of you already used at least REST APIs, or how many of you already know about REST APIs? At least that's a good way to start, right? So if you guys have any understanding of REST APIs, just that's this is the time to say. So you guys can probably find this session useful. So I'll probably put a lot more importance on the REST API itself rather than the code part, so you guys can find it really useful. I can model the session on any way. So if you guys have any experience with the REST API, or if you guys have don't no experience with REST API, just let me know right now so I can get this thing rolling. All right, so I guess I'm gonna get moving on because I don't find a lot of you people commenting. So anyway, so the point for this session is to continue with understanding the Dart as a server-side scripting language. Um, the first thing is that we're going to be building a simple server module. When I say simple server module, I mean that it's going to be very simple. So you can probably do some routing, you can probably render some data, and pretty much that's your objective. Let's say that that's going to be your objective. Then you can use Dart on your server side. So for example, let's say that you want to build a server that is going to be like pretty much doing the basic items like connect to a DB, and it wants to you want to like pull some data and then show to your web app like right here. So web or mobile, you can use Dart here, no problem, right? And that's what I want to be showing you guys, what is capable, what is possible with that. And if you are looking to do even more simpler things like probably render images or some basic static information, right? If you want to do something like this, you can still use Dart for your server. It's going to be, hey Sumit, how are you going, how's it going, thanks for joining this stream. Good evening as well. So continuing on, we're going to be looking into what computes is simple. When I say simple, I mean it should be very simple. You cannot expect your Dart server to do pretty much like scheduling. You want it to do like load balancing. No, that's not possible. That's definitely not possible with Dart on the server at least, because there is no support for it yet. So the simple, when I say simple, it's going to be very simple as to connect to a DB, get some information, probably show some images, some static information, simple information, things like that. The important framework that you're going to be using is called as Shelf. So Shelf is going to be the framework, and you will see as to why I am very skeptical about Dart on the server in a minute's time, because of this project Shelf, right? There was another project before Shelf, which was called as I think Aqua. So let's check here, Dart server, right? Dart server frameworks. So that I think it's what it's called as Aqua, right? Um, yeah, Aqueduct. So it is right now abandoned. It's a project that is gotten abandoned at this point of time. So if you go here, it does have 2395 stars, but it's an abandoned project, which is kind of like very hard to see, right? It's still in Dart 2.9, which is kind of like the old story. It's an abandoned project, and no more development goes inside this, and not a lot of people are even using this at this point of time. Good to good to say that Dart is a growing language. It's actually, to be honest, it's been there for more than 12 years, and to see it not grow at all is kind of like hard to see. But anyway, like they have streamlined it in such a way that they are not very focused on it being used as a multi-purpose language, unlike how Python was thinking of. Because if you want to have write Python, if you learn Python, you have a bunch of different places where you can use it. But on the Dart, they're not focusing on it that much, so you cannot really say about it. So anyway, this is one of the frameworks. It was kind of very useful in like last year before that even. um, but at this point of time it is gotten deprecated, or it's kind of gotten abandoned. And this is another framework that you're going to be using, which is the shelf as a framework, which I've just show you guys as to how easy and simple it is. But at the same time, I cannot like guarantee that it will not get abandoned in the future, pretty much because very limited amount of work is going into this, and not a lot of Dart servers, or like not a lot of Dart developers are working on it. So you can see my concerns with Dart on the server. It's still possible, like I'm iterating, it's possible, but at the same time, you guys have to take a good guess as to what constitutes a simple server like this, and what constitutes as a complex server, and what you want to do with it. So I'm going to be talking about why you want to use shelf at this point of time, because Aqueduct was if this Aqueduct was still in production, and still information is going in, or still development is going in, I would have suggested to go with Aqueduct, because it was kind of like an used framework that has gotten good amount of building behind it. But again, shelf is also under it's still an open framework, so you don't have to worry about it. So it's actually the shelf as a framework, right? I think shelf Dart. This is kind of still in production. So the last work came in started around July 8th of 2021. So kind of like still in production. So you guys don't have to worry about it. It's still like getting popular as the days goes by. Yeah. So this is the framework that you're going to be using in about 5 to 10 minutes time. I'm going to be showing you how to get started with this. But at the same time, let's get moving on. We're going to be using shelf for sure. And even before that, let's quickly look into what are the possibilities, or what are the pros of using Dart on the server. So if I say Dart on the server, I'm just not talking about it running on your local host. You should also think about a Dart server running on like a cloud, right? If you want to run it on Heroku, you want to run it on AWS, Kubernetes, somewhere, let's say you want to run it here, how easy it is to set things up in these kind of environments. That's also something that you need to think about. If it is very difficult to set up on all these three environments, then you will probably be like, it's easy to develop but difficult in production. That's not what you want to see. So that's what constitutes my pros and cons, because in the next slide I am talking about the pros. The first pro is that it can be easy for people who already have experience with Flutter on the front end. So this whole session itself is specifically for those of you who asked me like, why can't I use Flutter on the front end and Dart on the back end. So this is going to be what these are the people who can watch this session and get used from, can find it useful. So the first thing is that if you already know Flutter, if you already built Flutter, then Dart on the back end is going to be pretty much useful for you, right? You can still build things on the front end. The second is that it's easy to set up and create in your local system, and I'm just going to underline this very clearly, right? It's easy to set up and build in your local system. The setup is pretty much like painless. You just hit few commands and your setup is done, and you just need a Dart in your system. That's the Dart SDK is the only thing that you need in the system, and probably a Dart package, and you can get started almost instantly. The same thing can also be said for production system as well, because you do find that the pipelines are pretty much streamlined. It's still under the control of the Google developer, so it's still a Google product. It's not an open source project. So unlike Kiwi, which I've talked about in depth in my YouTube channel, right? Unlike Kiwi, which is an open source project, the Dart SDK is an company driven, is kind of a private project, right? So you'll find that it is pretty easy to set up. There is nothing complex about it. You can easily set up Dart on any system, and it's not going to have like a lot of version conflicts because Dart has a very streamlined way of releasing their versions. So you can find it pretty useful as well. So setting up on your local system and your I should say and your production system is very useful. The syntax is very similar. When I say similar, you should have known by this because the last, I guess, 6 to 7 sessions that we did specifically on using Dart, like understanding about Dart, we saw how similar it was to other programming languages like Python, Java, JavaScript. You had a tinge of every programming language inside Dart, and it's a kind of a conscious decision that Dart developers took at the start itself because they wanted to be as adaptable as possible. But sadly it did not turn out that way anyway. But the syntax is very similar, so if you guys are getting started with the Dart on your server, you can get started almost instantly without having to look into too much into the documentation. And also I've very clearly mentioned that support is decent up until this point. Like I said, there are few third-party plugins that got deprecated and abandoned, but up until this point the Dart as a SDK has got a good support, so you cannot worry, you needn't worry about it getting deprecated one sudden day and you wake up and your server is not running and you're like worried about it being on the, it's not getting updated at all. So that's not something you need to worry about. So these are the pros when it comes to the use of server Dart on the server. Coming to the cons, right, this is what I'm very conscious about and just want to make it as clear as possible even before you jump into the next slide where we talk about setting up your system. So the first con is that the adoption of Dart on the server is very less up until now. When I say very less, I'm talking about it being as less as probably 1% of Dart developers. 1% of people who are using Dart are thinking of Dart on the server. So it's kind of like a very small percentage. So 1% of the people who are looking or using Dart are looking at Dart on the server. So what should I do? I don't really know how this thing works, right? Scribble, yeah. So like I said, the 1% of them are looking at Dart on the server side. So only 1% are looking at Dart on the server, Dart as a server side on the server side at least. Dart can be used for production. Dart still can be used for production. If you are talking about Dart on the server, it can still be used for production. It's very much an easy to deploy programming language at this point of time. What I talked about getting abandoned is the project itself. So this is one of the quite famous project which is called as Aqueduct, and this is supposed to be an ORM based server-side scripting project, but it kind of got abandoned right through the center of the middle of 2020. I don't know if the developers kind of like abandoned it or something like that, but anyway, this kind of got abandoned right in the middle. So if you're talking about deploying, right, it's kind of quite easy to deploy even at this point of time. Like I said, primarily because Dart is being used for, and the setup of Dart is very easy, right? You download your Dart SDK, add it to your environment, and you're done. You're gonna get used to. You can start writing Dart programming. You can start programming with Dart. But the thing about deploying it on the production, you got to be very careful because you need to think about it, the updates that are going to come out. Let's say that today you are using a shelf as your package, you're using shelf as your package, and you are writing your RESTful APIs, you're deploying it in your server and people are using it and you're very happy about it. Suddenly shelf decides to stop using or stop updating their fixing their issues, they stopped supporting their package. What will happen at this point of time? Will you like go ahead and stop your entire server, or will you rewrite your entire server, reroute everything? Your client is now like having probably 10,000 customers. Will you like go ahead and rewrite your server? Will you go ahead and fix your server, or what will you do, right? That kind of dilemma is going to be always there because you can never be sure until the adoption rate increases, until like say 20% of Dart developers are thinking of Dart on the server. Because at this point of time I'm pretty sure it's less than 1%. Like say like less 1 million people are using Dart. That's pretty much like, I don't even know, like 10,000 people are going to be thinking about Dart on the server. It should increase to probably at least a lakh or probably 2 lakh people. So 20% of the Dart server population, the Dart developer population, should think about Dart on the server. Until they do, it's going to be like a big question mark as to what kind of support what kind of support is going to be there in the production. You cannot suddenly wake up one day and see that your server is not running anymore because the Dart on the server is stopped. So the choice of frameworks is very important, right? And when I talk about that, I talked about this one, right? The shelf as a framework, which is what we're going to see. And you can see that it's pretty new as well. It's not like it's pretty old or something like that. It's kind of like an 8-month old project. This is primarily because architects stopped. So kind of an 8-month old project. Let's say that after 20 more months, or probably after a year and a half, these guys think it's no more useful for me to do it, so I'm just going to stop it and I'm just going to abandon this project, right? And that's not something that you want to see. And at this point of time, the Dart is saying that the shelf is from themselves, like they are like supporting the shelf as a project or a framework. So you can still use it, but at this point of time, you got to be very careful. So it's up to you to decide what you want to do. Do you want to like support scalability? Do you want to support like long-term thinking, or you are just looking it to build for a short term of time, and you'll probably be not using it after 6 months or after 4 months. If that's your case, you can still go ahead, but at this point of time, just be very careful of the cons that the Dart on the server still provides. So anyway, moving on, the package wise, like I said, many have gotten abandoned. One is Aqueduct. There are a few others as well that got abandoned over the years. And Dart is very new on the server side. You cannot deny this at all. It's kind of like the newest kid on the server side, right? You have like veterans with JavaScript, you have Python. All of these are going to be like 15-20 years of being run on the production, being used on the production for servers in particular. And suddenly you are bringing in Dart as a programming language inside server, and you want to like scale it up. It's going to be a big question mark again, right? Scalability, when I say, right, it should be able to support 100x the current user. So let's say you have 10,000 users in your system. The whole goal is to support a minimum of a million users, right? And or probably 10 million users. You need to test or build for that. And only if you build for 100x of your users, it will work properly for 10x of the user. So that's kind of like another algorithm or framework that design developers use, right? If you're building like a big framework, like say in India you have these big frameworks like big companies like Zomato, you have Swiggy, and it has millions and millions of users. In an academy has millions and millions of users. So how do you design these systems? The primary goal behind designing these systems is to build for 100x, build for 100x and expect 10x. So this 10x is basically, say for example you have already 1 million users, you need to build for 100 million users, and it'll work pretty much, it should work for sure for 10 million users. So that's pretty much how the whole design process goes into picture. And at the same time, in testing, you'll probably be testing for 200x, and this is actually the whole design pattern behind building large complex uh, websites, I should say, or services. And if you do only this much, then your application will be stable. Then you can think of all the nook and corners and think of corner scenarios where you can improve this. But will your Dart as a Dart on the server support this much of scalability is a big question mark at this point of time, because like I said, you can even think about 1 million users, you can probably think about 10,000 users at this point of time. I'll tell why this is the case. Why you can't scale is, I'll talk about it in a bit. But this is what it supports at this point of time with simple frameworks like shelf and all that. It can only do simple things, right? You can only deliver you simple things. So you cannot like build obviously for 100 million people, or no, probably that's not possible, because scalability is going to be an issue. All right. Again, one more important thing is it a framework? Is it a full framework? Is it a middleware? Or what is it? What exactly is the Dart on the server going to do? At this point of time, the shelf is probably talking about it as a middleware. If you can see here, it's a middleware on for Dart. So it's not pretty much like a full-fledged server, right? You can do routing for sure. There's a shelf dot router that you're going to be seeing about, and you can do good amount of routing. But what exactly is it beyond that? Is it actually a full framework like how FastAPI works or Django or Flask works, or is it just going to be like a middleware just supporting the middle layers alone? And that's what is a big question mark even at this point of time. So no confirmation is what I have put. So is actually kind of a big gone at this point of time. Finally, it's again way behind the competition. Like I mean, like I said, it's kind of like way behind competition, and not a lot of work is going inside it. Even though the Dart as a programming language is pretty much solid, right? You did see about it. It's kind of like very useful. You can do a lot of compilation free. There's a lot of things that's possible, especially the isolates that we talked about. How the thread safe model is very much uh, improved with the Dart compiler. Exactly. So that's true, right? Yeah. So you always that's the design thinking that you should have. So if you see big companies like Amazon, Google, which supports it supports at the peak, it supports pretty much like 4 5 billion, 4 to 5 billion customers, right? It's supporting billions and billions of customers. So you are thinking about multiple server farms running at parallel. So you need to design it in such a way that you are going to be thinking always in a bigger terms. 100x the customer, test it for 200x, expect 10x. So this is going to be like the design formula. So this is what you'll be taught. If you're going to be not taught, this is kind of like the unsaid formula when you're building huge complex systems. So that's what I talked about here. So is it going to be doing that? Is Dart going to be doing that? That's a big question mark. So that's what we are going to be seeing here. So but still, like I said, if you want to build some kind of a simple prototype, you have like a deadline, project deadline, a simple school project or college project that you want to like show to your professors, or you just want to submit a prototype, and you're not worried about scalability, you're not worried about all these things, right? You can definitely use that on the server and just probably show them like this is how it works, and we're going to be using some other tech stack to scale things up. You can use a mean stack, you can use there's also a lot of different stack with Java, you can use Python, some kind of a known stack to improve this already available code. So that's what you can do the Dart for. So it's not like it's definitely impossible, it's definitely possible, but at the same time you need to be very aware of what is your expectation, what is your end goal. So that's what we're going to be seeing. So the next slide, I'm going to be introducing you guys this shelf as a programming, shelf as a package. As I've mentioned here, we're going to be doing some installations. You're going to be using the Visual Studio Code. So far we have done everything on the Dart pad, but for this we're going to be using Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to be showing you guys how it is possible for sure. So just take probably a 5 minute break or a 2 minute break. How much? Yeah, I'll probably take now a couple of minutes break and just come back and introduce you guys to the concept of shelf package, and probably show you guys what is possible and how you can use it in your system. So if you have any questions, just definitely drop these things right now. That's what I'm going to be doing. Okay, so questions, or should I write it here? Questions. No, this is not clear enough. I'll probably do it here. Questions. If questions, drop them right now. I'll be back in a couple of minutes, and we will just quickly go into introducing the shelf on your Visual Studio Code. You should have Visual Studio Code installed. If you don't have it installed, do not worry. You can do it. It's going to take a couple of minutes time, and you can definitely start writing your Dart code. Okay, I'm back. Hopefully, yeah, voices was clear. So, Sumit is saying bigger projects Flutter as front end for backend node, Python, JavaScript, any programming language, which is big community. Yeah, no, at this point of time, you're good to go with Flutter if you want on the front end, and any of the any of the already established framework on the back end, right? I'm not very particular about them being like, let's say that you want to um, mm, just a second, I kind of lost the questions, so just open it in my damn just open it in my yeah, it's here. So yeah, so the question is it okay to use Flutter on the front end with other programming frameworks for the server on the back end, or should we really wait for Dart to get popular? So is that the question, right? So my answer is it's very simple, right? What is it supporting, or what is it that you're building for? If you're going to be building it for scalability, you are thinking about it should scale down the line. I'm not going to wait for it to become popular. I'm not going to wait for it. My need is it's supposed to work right now, and I want to scale it. The answer is that you should definitely go for other frameworks. If the answer is that I'm just not worried about it scaling, I'm just worried about it being a prototype, and I'm just going to support probably 10 customers at the max, and that's the whole thing I'm going to do it for. And I'm also not going to do anything complex. I'm just going to be doing something very simple, and it's going to be very short period of time, probably 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. And I don't really care about that getting popular or anything of that sort, right? You can use it for yourself. So that's going to be the whole idea. You don't necessarily think about it, will it scale, will it be scaled on the future, will it get support, because you never know, right? Even Python, there was this huge thing that happened when Python decided to deprecate their 2.9, or which is the Python 2, and they wanted to move everybody from Python 2 to Python 3. And since the popularity of the language was so huge, the lot of bigger companies, especially even mine also started, they did do the transition from Python 2 to Python 3. And that is always going to be there. And as a developer, as a you know programmer, you're bound to have different versions. That's the whole idea behind versioning. So don't worry about it being a major blocker, but just worry about what your end goal is. If your end goal is to build bigger and scalable items, scalable services, then you should definitely look for other frameworks, because I don't think Dart can even match at this rate of time. So let's quickly go into what Shelf does, and I'm just going to be explaining it to you for all of those people who asked me specifically for it. So yeah, if you are asking me like, why did you even do this session, if you're talking much more negative things about Dart, I'm not talking about negative things about Dart. I'm just talking about what is capable of, what is not capable of. I'm not being like very too optimistic or too pessimistic about it. Just saying what it is at this point of time, just saying what it is used for at this point of time, and also giving you guys both of them on a plate, and then explaining the package itself, so you can just look into it. So I'm going to be using the Visual Studio Code. The Visual Studio Code is what is going to be used for. And I've also built a simple package. I've called it let's see, why is it not like, I need to make it bigger. Yeah, so I've just I just created a package using Dart. Just named it as server side test. Just did this package, and the first thing you need to do is, if you are not using Visual Studio Code, I will highly recommend you guys to start using Visual Studio Code, even for your Flutter development, because that's pretty much like extremely useful, right? It's a extremely useful IDE. It's not very overpowering. It is very less, and it uses less memory and compared to Android Studio. So anyway, so the first thing you need to do is, I've put things inside this, and pretty much what command I used was yes. So this is what this command is what I used. So just use the dart create. I just put a template package, simple package, and I name this package as server side test. And setting up Dart is very simple. Just download your, yeah, Control Shift P, you know that. The setup of Dart is pretty simple. Just download the SDK, put it into your environment, and you are good to go. You have your Dart available readily. That's the same for production as well. Once you are deploying it to production, just have it in your bin file. I mean, have the bin file in your path, and it will pretty much run. Which one you want to show the Dart setup? uh, I'm not really sure, like, you want me to show the setup of Dart, like how do you set up Dart in your environment? All right, so which is the select from Dart package? Okay, I'll show you that. It's actually kind of very simple. So if you set up your SDK, your Flutter SDK, Dart comes by default, like it will automatically no, you don't need to necessarily do anything installation on. Okay, so that's a good question. So you're asking about the extension, right? I'm not going to do any extension. I'm just installing only the Dart extension only. If you see, I already have these two things installed. You don't necessarily have to install your Dart server, because Dart server is not something like you don't necessarily have to do it, right? Um, it, there is no kind of a server here, right? So you don't have to necessarily worry about it. Just install your Dart language support as an extension, and you see the installed ones, it's only Dart and Flutter, and these are the two things when you have installed. I don't have to install anything else. I've installed that, but at the same time you also need to have the latest SDK in your system. Just don't like without SDK present, you cannot do anything. Okay, so I don't have anything else present, so it's like only that these two things are really present. You're talking about the Dart SDK, right? So that's what I was about to show you, right? Yeah. So if you have the Flutter SDK already installed, you'll have the Dart SDK by default installed. So if you're not having the Flutter SDK installed, if you're not building for, after typing Control Shift P, what exactly are you talking about? Here, Control Shift P, and I'm not doing anything here. Can you probably elaborate your question? Like, put 20 lines if you want, but still explain like what exactly you're talking about. Oh, what to type to start Dart? I'll tell you about that. Yeah, it's just a simple Dart command. Just run Dart, your package site, right? This one you're asking, right? Dart run. Create a package. Okay, it's Dart create. So it's Dart create template is equal to a package simple, and you will put your package name here. This is going to be the command. Dart create space hyphen template. You just need to specify the template. You can, I just created a simple template. I mean, I'm using the simple template because it will have if you see my package, right, it will have um, yeah, if you see here, it's having very simple things, like it's having the usual things like your lib, your test, and that's pretty much it. It will also have your spec YAML, and yeah, you see in your this is everything that you see in your Flutter as well, right? Because Flutter is using Dart in its background to build this thing. So I don't need anything else. I just need my SDK to be present and this PubSpec YAML. I don't have to necessarily even worry about installing other packages as well. So this is going to be the command that I'm using to build my package. It's Dart create hyphen template equal to package simple, and I'm giving this name of my package. So that's pretty much it. And I'm just going to be starting with a simplest of code to show you how the package gets started. So let's do that. All right, so the first thing we need to do is to, once you have your system installed and everything installed, have your data SDK also installed, and put it in your environment. If you're using Mac, make sure to put it in your path, and if it's Windows, make sure to put it in your environment. The next thing you're going to do is to import two things, which is the import package, the shelf itself. You have shelf, and you can see that it is importing the shelf.data. The next thing you want to do is to import your package shelf.io, and these are two things that you need. Pretty much that's all you need. And as usual, every Dart program should have a main, right? So we're going to use the main, and make sure to call it as synchronous. I'll tell you why. Inside the main, we're going to be using only two things. The first thing is going to be that we are going to be pretty much using our first handler. We're going to be creating our first variable, which we'll call it as handler, and it's going to be a pipeline. So it's, you're going to be invoking the pipeline. So this is the basic code that you need, and we're going to be adding the middleware, and it's just going to say if you want to add any middleware inside it, you can just add it. Call it as shelf IO, because that's what we are going to be using. And why is it throwing an error? It's not a class, but it's a void. Yeah. And inside of the add middleware, we will just say we're using the log request, and we'll just add the middleware, and we're going to be adding the handler here. So I'll just talk about the handler part. The next thing is going to be that we're going to be setting up our server, and the handler is to pretty much just echo things out as soon as the pipeline is created. The only important code that you need is the server. So just say server is you wait for the shelf.io to start the serve. So just say serve, and you will just serve the handler. So the handler that you already created, you will just serve the handler. You just say, and where exactly should it be served at? So you need to say the address. The address is going to be the local host, and the port is going to be 8000. So that's all you are going to be saying. So this is the only command that, or only line that you need. And as you see here, it's saying a wait expression can be used in async function. Isn't that really a function? I don't know why it is doing this issue. I'm missing the function definition. Anyway, so this is the main function that I've created. The asynchronous and await is also done. So the await is done, and we just created our pipeline. And we just also, if you want it, it's not mandatory to do auto compress, but it's also given as the default one. So auto compress is to make sure that it isn't going to like extremely use a lot of resource loads, and it'll just do the simple resource for us, and it'll just print some information like the server has started successfully, right? And we are pretty much done. So the print statement is done. Only thing we need to do is to now add an handler here. Once you add the handler here, you are going to be doing pretty fine. So just create another method right now, and we're just going to be creating our first handler. So it's going to be of type response. It's going to be the base class that you will see, and it's going to be the request that you can take, and it's going to be the request of request. So it's going to take the request, and it will just simply return the response as okay, and it will add the information like request that came has been from. You can just add the all right. And this request is what we're going to be using, right? So just use this request, and for every request that goes inside, I want this method to be called. So I'll just call this method, and it will just be pretty much done. log request handler dot add handler, add middleware, add the handler. All right. So this is basically from the code that is already present as the example, and you just now try to run this code. So hopefully it's clear. No, you shouldn't do it in Control Shift P. So that's the thing. So what you're trying to do is for Sumit's question, right? You're trying to do it in here. You're trying to do Dart server and all. Don't do this. That's not what you should do. Just have your Dart in your system and run it in your terminal, right? Create the package in your terminal. Even before you open your package, create it in your terminal. Go to your terminal and create the package, and then go inside it. Just do a CD inside it. I don't think you need to do anything specifically to select a web server. So what you're saying is in VS you type it in bare bones console application Dart package. Just choose the Dart package. That's what you want, right? You want to have a Dart package. I don't. I'm thinking you're going through the recommended way of setting up a Dart package like a Flutter package, which is not what you want. We just want to have the Dart package created. So that's what you're going to be doing. Hopefully that clears things up. So this is the code. It's already present. If you, I'm not like doing anything extraordinary here. I'm just using the same code from the shelf package, which is already present. So what we're going to be doing is to now start our code, which is to say Dart run, and it's inside the lib, right? So lib Dart. Or is it inside the lib? It's inside lib source uh, server. Server run inside lib source. What? Yeah, is it a server side base? I think so. No, it's inside lib and it's inside that directly, not inside source. We are inside this. So lib and server side dot dot. So just say dart run. You know, collapse this. Are you happy? What exactly you're trying to see here? I'm thinking you are trying to set things up from I'm not sure how you're setting things up. So I would recommend you to set things up in such a way that you have your Dart SDK downloaded separately, add it to your path, open your Visual Studio Code, and set it everything to your terminal, because the terminal is going to give you a lot more it's going to give you a lot more flexibility. Cool. If you understood what, if you have questions for your, if you have answers for your questions, then I'm pretty happy. So this is what you're going to do. Just Dart run server side test. Is it a server side test? Yeah, server side test. Okay. Cool. Got it. Okay. Hit run, and it should start the server successfully. So just put that the server has started successfully, and we know that the server is going to be running in our local host, right? So just say local host, it's going to be 8000. So 8000, and you can see that I'm trying to hit the local host and showing the answer right here. So hopefully this you can see. Yeah, this is all I want. So basically it's trying to render the favicon, which it's saying it's 200, but I think this is the favicon it's trying to render, which is cool for us. The next thing you want to do is to try to understand if the APIs are working fine. So just type some name here, says their name, and it is hitting that URL. So basically our handler is working fine. The handler controls everything in our package, which is the shelf package. The handler, if you put name, it's going to render the request's name. It's bringing things up pretty fine. The next thing is you can put like name Bharat, and it will still show that path extremely. It's going to show that path as clear as it is. So that's the whole idea behind the shelf package. There's one more concept for the shelf route as well, which I'll show right now, which is also very simple, to be honest, and you don't necessarily need to do anything extra. So now you have the server created already, right? So we have the server created already. and we have the base also present. So I'm just going to leave it as such right here, and what I'm going to do is, instead of setting my handler via pipeline, I'm just going to try to serve, which is going to be the shelf io dot serve. Instead of serving the handler, I'm going to be serving an app. The app is going to be a router, and the router will decide if I want to hit my URL. For example, let's say I want to hit the slash name slash Bharat, I need to render something. So that's what I'm going to try to do now. So let the void async just remove the entire thing from the void async. So instead of the handler, I'll try to now render a router. So basically I'm going to create a router. The router is basically to this route right like this, and user comes in and says I want to access the endpoint, which is name slash Bharat. So I need to route it to that URL, right? So that's what the request routing is for, and it's automatically done via the router class. So just remove the whole void main part completely. We'll remove everything. We don't necessarily need a handler anymore, but we will need the shelf.dart, which is going to be the base class. The IO is also required, and finally we will have the package shelf slash shelf router dot. Right, we'll have the shelf router dot, and we are, is it coming up? I don't think it's coming up. Package shelf, why is it not coming up? Package shelf slash shelf router. Oh, I think I made like an issue with the shelf router, but still it should work, right? Why is it not working? Should add dependency in my I don't know, should I add it here? I think I need to add the dependencies. Alright, looks like my dependency is not added, and I think I've made that mistake. So could be a reason why it is not coming up. WebSocket. Okay, so the shelf WebSocket is I don't know why this thing is like, oh my god, this autocomplete is just taking the life out of me. Package shelf WebSocket, this one, right? Whatever this is, right? So this WebSocket is nothing. So think about this this way. So you have a 3-pin socket in your system, right? In your home you have a 3-pin socket. You can put your pin inside it, and how do you determine that your pin, which is a 3-pin, goes inside a socket? How do you determine that? You have a 3-pin. Only because you have a 3-pin, you are, yes, you know that it's going to go inside the 3-pin socket. Let's say you have only a 2-pin socket now. Will your 3-pin plug go inside your 2-pin socket? It will not go inside, right? And that's exactly the concept behind WebSockets as well. So WebSockets is basically, you have a server rendering somewhere, and you're defining that this server will now have a route, a path, and probably an your port number, which is the 8000 that we have defined here. So you defined 8000 as the port number, right? Let's say you have your router, you are saying this is the path, this is the router, and also the port number. So you're defining technically a mechanism to identify your server using a concept of sockets. So sockets are basically to plug things in as you want and take things out as when you don't want it. That's like the bare bones explanation for a WebSocket. So if you want to really understand much more about what exactly does that mean, right, I'll just give it to you. So this is something that you talked about in the start itself. So if you have a WebSocket connection present, it's not basically like an REST API. So you have a WebSocket connected, your wire is connected to your socket. It'll continuously send information. It'll continuously send the current, right? And if you want something like that, you don't want it to be just for the REST API purpose. You want to have a persistent connection with your server until you are done with something. Let's say the example is here is to transfer some amount of bandwidth of information. You want to transfer 2 GB of information from your server to your client. You cannot transfer 2 GB of information by hitting it in a REST API. The REST API might give you a 2 GB of information, but it's going to be very huge for you to read it, and again, it's going to be a huge headache, right? So what you're trying to do is to have a WebSocket connection established, which will have a persistent connection, which will not stop until you define that I'm done with you. So this is going to be like a continuous connection that's going to be present. You can continuously transfer and talk about pass information between the server and the client until some kind of information is completed, like until your purpose is completed. So that's the idea behind WebSockets. So the WebSockets and the REST APIs can be used. Your server can work both as a REST API server as well as an persistent server in corner cases if you want to define that. And that's what this shelf also gives. So I haven't really extraordinarily used this much or anything of that sort. I just wanted this session to be particular about just talk about the art on the server side. So that's what this whole thing is going to be about. Alright, hopefully I did clear a lot of questions. I do know that I talked about router part. I think the router part is kind of like I need to have it defined in my pub spec, but a pub spec is not showing. I just now checked that the pub dev is not having that router part. That's exactly right. So you have a fixed telephone line and disconnect when not used. That's exactly right. That's the best way to put it. The idea behind socket came from the fact that until you plug something out of a socket, right? In India, we have switches, right? But everywhere else, there is no concept of switches. You put a plug into a socket, it gives you current. If you plug it out of the socket, it does not going to give you any current. So the power is not going to flow through it. So that's why they named it socket. Technically they should have named it a switch, because you switch on, you're going to transfer information. If you switch it off, it's not going to transfer information. But again, it's a completely different concept. The use of switches are for switching between, not for turning on and off. It's not a binary there, so don't confuse about that and all that. But again, WebSockets, for like I said, is going to transfer information on a persistent basis. It will also have few other properties like HTTP forward. You can do HTTP context switching. You can have persistent connections, right? When you have a persistent connection, you can do anything you want. It will also have something called as a lock, which will hold the lock until you release it. So think of it as a lock, right? That's also another interesting analogy if you want. Alright, I guess I'm going to be finishing this stream in about a minute's time. Hopefully this information was again, this session was informative. I told you guys that I'll show you how this whole thing works, but again, like I said, this is not something that you would want to know about if you're building it for a huge client or anything of that sort. And as long as you are very comfortable with other frameworks, you can definitely go for that. And yeah, simple router, I wanted to show you guys an example of simple router, but again, I think the pub spec is screwed up. So I'll just go to the conclusion part, which again is again the same conclusion like I've been telling. It's up to you to decide what you want. If you want to scale things up, make sure to scale up. Right now, scale up, go for Python, JS, or Java based frameworks, whatever language you're comfortable in. If you're not very worried about it, you have a flatter front end and you want to just have a server to facilitate this, just for the prototype purpose, just go for your Dart on the backend. So that's what you are, that's what I really wanted to communicate in this session. Not much of a scalability that's going to be associated with this. Like you said, it's a simple middleware, right? There's not a lot of full-fledged the server support available. Only the middleware support available at this point of time. So it's up to you guys to decide what you really want to do. So one important note, so tomorrow I'm going to be doing a session, Saturday, probably morning of tomorrow. I'm going to be talking about how you can get started with programming. When I say started with programming, I'm not talking about programming basics or anything of that sort. I'm going to be giving you guys my tips and tricks and methodologies, methods that I used to get started with programming. So it's going to be a very useful session if you guys are interested. I'm also going to be talking about this mainly based on Python, because one of the easiest language to learn is Python for sure. I'm going to be giving you my tips and tricks on how I started with programming, and also all the different methods to keep things in your memory. If you want to get started with programming, if you're having any difficulties with that, just hit attend the session, so you'll find very useful. On Sunday, again, it's going to be like a one-on-one session. You can call me on Zoom. We're going to have a Zoom conversation, and you can I'll probably let 5 people in at a time. So we just have a Zoom conversation. We can communicate it over voice call, and you can ask your questions and I'll try to answer them as much as possible. So I'll see you guys on Saturday and Sunday. It's going to be fun. I'll probably have few of things lined up for next week as well. I need some time to prepare, and I'll see you guys tomorrow as usual. So thanks again for joining this stream, guys. Hopefully this session was informative for everybody who watched it. I'll see you guys again tomorrow. Until then, it's Bharat. Peace out and have a super awesome day.